Peregrine Espresso in Capitol Hill. I'm joined by three amazing small business owners from the Small Business for America's Future Network. And we're going to really hop in on our kind of conversation today. And so today I'm joined, as I said, by three amazing coffee business owners who are here to share a little bit more about what's been going on the ground, navigating the tariff chaos, rising costs, and customers who are unfortunately pulling back on spending. The holiday season is typically a time of year where small businesses thrive. You know, we hear constantly shop small and Small Business Saturday is important. But it's also a really important year for businesses where they go from their red to their black. But unfortunately, this year feels a little bit different. A recent Small Business for America's Future survey found that 74% of small business owners are worried about surviving the next 12 months, and 80% of those who are hit by tariffs view them as an existential threat. Unlike large corporations that can absorb these shocks, small businesses operate on razor-thin margins, and tariffs have driven up costs on everything from raw materials to packaging, while customers have less money to spend. Coffee businesses show exactly why this is so damaging. Until this year, I didn't realize coffee can only be grown commercially in 3 places in the United States: Hawaii, California, and Puerto Rico. And together they produce less than 1% of what we consume. I think America might run on coffee. So when those tariffs did hit, roasters everywhere had nowhere to turn. And so I actually want to bring in some of these coffee roasters and coffee shop owners from our network for a conversation. And so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with some basic introductions and bring in Autumn Pruitt, the owner of Hardy Coffee, to introduce herself. Hey, Autumn.
Hi, thanks for having me today. My name's Autumn Pruitt. My husband Luke and I own Hardy Coffee Company in Omaha, Nebraska. And so we actually started the bakery piece of our business first in 2010. But in 2011, we took over the coffee shop we were subleasing from. Since then, we've opened 3 additional brick and mortar locations, including a drive-through. We started roasting in 2015 and have since grown to about 60 wholesale accounts that we also serve in addition to our own forward shops.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a pretty large coffee shop. So it must be a really interesting time of year for you guys today.
Yeah, it's funny. People are always like, man, you really blew up. And it's the reality is it took us 15 years to open 4 locations. So I don't know that it's a rocket trajectory of growth, but it's been slow, steady growth that we have been supported by our community over the years.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Autumn. Next, I'd like to introduce Ron Kirknick of Superior Coffee Roasting Company.
Yeah, Ron Kernick, and I am the owner of Superior Coffee Roasting in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, which is right on the border with Canada, our twin city of Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And we've been roasting here since 2012. And we have, a few years thereafter, opened up a cafe in town. And we have a really great staff. We've got about 20 in our collection that help make things run smoothly. Our focus really is mostly on the retail and wholesale distribution, and we ship everywhere from Alaska to the Florida Keys.
Awesome. Well, I want to get into that a little bit later in the conversation, Ron, because I'm sure it's got to be interesting navigating tariffs while you're right close to that border there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and before we hop into that, I do want to also now bring in the wonderful Gabe Hagan, owner of Brick Road Coffee in Tempe, Arizona. Go Sun Devils. So Gabe, why don't you come off mute and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Gabe Hagan. I am the owner of Brick Road Coffee in Tempe, Arizona. We started in 2021 as a single coffee shop, kind of starting a new career after the pandemic. And we've expanded last year to our 2nd location, and we just expanded into roasting and our wholesale operations. So it's been a fun 4 years. We're now up to 28 lovely employees that we employ here in Arizona.
That's awesome. Well, thank you all again for joining us today. And you know, we did talk about this is the holiday season, and we're really in what I would think is probably your busiest time of the year, and what I guess is your most profitable time of the year. But prior to this conversation, each of you all were telling me that this year feels a little bit different. And that, you know, it's been a little bit more difficult to navigate this time. And so Gabe, I know you recently just opened a 2nd location, which I'm thinking should have been a celebration. But what's it actually been like this year for you, and how has tariffs really impacted, your pricing and your staffing, and really navigating kind of being able to grow your business?
Oh, yeah, this year's been fun. So we started the plan to expand in 2024. So early 2024, we did a lot of forecasting. We really looked at where we were at with our single location and kind of what I wanted to create. So we made the decision in mid 2024 to acquire another coffee shop and expand it to build our wholesale roasting facility and also our second cafe location there. But the construction process takes a while. So we started in mid last year. We didn't open until June of this year. And going from a white label operation to bringing roasting in-house, and you made all of these forecasts and projections based off of coffee pricing in 2024. And then by the time I'm able to actually order my first pallet, there's tariffs everywhere. It's been a fun learning curve for sure on that aspect. Definitely had to take some unique funding approaches. I took my 401k from my previous career, invested that in. We actually just appraised our house so we could put the rest of that equity on as collateral for some additional working capital. So we're kind of hitting all of the different levers that we can to really get us to a point where we can hopefully stabilize and weather some of these policies we didn't quite forecast for.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine that's been difficult. And I know we're kind of joking around that you don't even have your coffee sleeves because they're sitting somewhere in a warehouse because of the tariffs charges. And so I can imagine that's making it a little bit difficult to really get that second location off the ground and feel comfortable kind of going into your next year. Um,
Yep.
Now I want to bring in Ron. I know, you did mention that you are kind of close to the Canadian border. And so I'd be curious to hear how things have been playing out for Superior Coffee and really how have things been going for you in Michigan?
Well, we've had a unique situation here to where not only did we have to start um, figuring out a game plan with regard to tariffs for imports. Our coffee, was the biggest hit, and we were having to pay extra for that. But we also have distribution in Ontario, and so because of the whole tariff situation, there was reciprocal tariffs that were levied against U.S. products that were imported into Canada, and so I was hit twice basically, to where by the time I paid the tariffs, roasted the coffee, packaged it, and sent it across the border, I was at a loss. I mean, I was in the negative territory, but obviously I kept the distribution going and everything just to keep that continuity. But yeah, it was quite a surprise. And then just having to figure out what tariff is going to change next. Yeah, it was fun.
I feel like the word of the year was uncertainty.
Yeah.
Imagine at no point in that uncertainty were you expecting to be billed twice. And I'm imagining a lot of businesses, probably like your own, really don't have the capital to have to manage some of that kind of financial pieces that are coming with some of the tariffs.
Exactly. And we wanted to bring in K-Cup production. We have a partner that we work with on that currently, but we wanted to expand and do that. But with this uncertainty, that was really put on the back burner. And so was the hiring for the additional staff that was needed for that production work. So it was just, yeah, we were just kind of on a holding pattern in order to just kind of keep things as they are.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine it. And I think that's a really great time to bring in Autumn as well, because you're managing 4 locations and 60 wholesale accounts. You have this kind of larger feeling small business. You said it took a long time to kind of build and grow. So how has things been? How's your year really looked for you and your business, as it relates to like absorbing costs and dealing with some of this kind of uncertainty happening in Nebraska?
Yeah, I often wish that I had a little less empathy for my wholesale accounts because I think that if we could just pass along those additional expenses right away, then we wouldn't feel that that tension quite so much. But for us, we want to make sure that even though we're blindsided by these increases in tariffs, that we were still giving our wholesale accounts enough time to raise prices appropriately. And so there were a few months in there where we were forecasting with them. We were helping them adjust their prices accordingly so that they could stay afloat in the process. And so I feel like we try so hard to absorb those expenses as long as we can, but there's just not enough margin to absorb them all in a year like 2025.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure that's probably pretty difficult to try and figure out, as you're looking toward next year, and again, that kind of time where you can look from going from the red to the black. And so, one thing that's been really interesting, I think, about this entire tariffs conversation is a lot of people aren't really thinking, are able to keep up with the constant changes. And I actually think I was reading the other day that coffee beans were actually recently exempt from tariffs. So in my thought, shouldn't things be getting a little bit better? But it sounds like from what I was hearing from you all earlier, maybe that's not the case, and you might not be seeing relief for another few months. So I don't know, Gabe, why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of what that means for your business, and is that going to make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it will make a difference. As to when we feel the difference, that's a real big question. I mean, we're new into the wholesale roasting game, so all of that green coffee that you see on that pallet, those tariffs, I didn't get those back in my pocket when that executive order came through. I've already paid the tariffs on those. I have to roast through that. I have to sell through it. And same thing with a lot of our importers that we work with. If they have coffee that's in their warehouse that has tariffs, they're going to have to sell through it. So it really is going to be kind of dependent upon how we proceed from here as to how quickly we'll feel that relief. Until we get to the point where we're only ordering the stuff that's come in since the tariffs have been removed, then we'll definitely feel that relief. But until then, it's still going to be a pain point. I mean, when I was forecasting in 2024, the mid-range coffee that I was looking at was maybe around 700 a bag. Now I think at the peak I bought it for over 1,000 a bag. And it's just like these types of changes and those types of swings are so hard to do because we don't have at our scale the ability to pivot and to find alternatives that are at a better price point, to keep our quality and our consistency where we want it. So yeah, going from a $7,000 pallet, as I say, going from a $7,000 pallet to an $11,000 pallet really hurts.
Yeah. Well, and Autumn, you came off mute. That must have resonated for you.
It did. And I would just add on to that even low quality coffee is now expensive. And so there were a few different times in this last year where we were tasting a lot of different coffees from our importer to say, man, is there a way we can blend this? Is there a way that we could have a different option available for our accounts that want it? And the reality was that the really bad coffee was still very expensive. And so there was a moment where we just locked eyes, my roaster and I, and we said, like, this isn't the way that we're going to do business. We're going to maintain the quality, and we're going to have to find a way to find that money elsewhere. But I mean, it's an interesting year where you see the price of coffee at the grocery store also going up exponentially. It's not just specialty coffee roasters. We're in the top 2% of all coffee that's grown in the entire world. But even low quality coffee is expensive. And so we might as well make it good.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the quality over, is important to you all. And, Ron, you everyone's talking about the kind of the cost of coffee, but it's not just coffee beans that are experiencing issues from these tariffs. You mentioned, you have K-cups that you're making and really the packaging that goes through it all. So what are some of the things that you're seeing on your end?
Yeah, the coffee is the biggest one, but certainly there's a lot of other factors when it comes to putting together a product out to market, and packaging is one big part of it as well. And most of the packaging does come from overseas. China is probably the largest producer, and so that's where we get our customized packaging made. And as everyone knows, the swings in just the Chinese tariffs have gone, in all directions. So it's a sort of thing that has to be planned 6-8 months in advance. And so if I were to put an order today, for example, I'm not going to see that for 6 months because of, production timelines, shipping timelines, and that sort of thing. So by the time it gets to port, who knows what could happen? A 10% tariff now could be 40, 50%. And, that's the uncertainty aspect of it that has us biting our nails and losing sleep at night. So we have to kind of have a contingency plan to anticipate some of that, but otherwise we just absorb what we can absorb, pass on the rest if we have to, and we try and mitigate that as much as we can.
Yeah, no, I can imagine as well. And what I'm hearing too, so it's not necessarily just the cost of those beans going up and the tariffs on that create exemptions there's so many other costs that you all are having to kind of navigate and figure out. And Autumn, you had mentioned earlier that a big coffee chain can absorb these kind of 25% cost increases and can really take that on. But as a smaller business, you don't necessarily have the same opportunities. You raised wholesale prices by 30% and you're still looking for places to cut. What has it been like in your day to day as you're trying to navigate some of that?
Yeah, I think it's so hard to lead when the future is foggy. And so I think to have more certainty and more predictability would make the hard things feel a little more manageable. And so I think it's so much of what Ron and Gabe have already spoken to, but it's trying to figure out um, not just the month ahead, but the next 6 months ahead, and trying to figure out how you lead a team. For us, we have 70 people on our team. And so to say, how do we make sure that we are leading them well and making sure we're caring for our customers throughout? So we've been as creative as possible. We work really closely with our importers. We try to find ways that we can save on shipping, or we can save on storage, or we can save on things that don't affect the quality of the product. But at the end of the day, like, our main business is coffee. And so there's just no way around not serving that.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, and I know tariffs are a large financial kind of burden that you all are kind of trying to figure out. Now, on the customer side, right? I think coffee shops can't run without customers. And everything I think we've been seeing in the news and on social media is that things are costing more, there's rising costs. People are kind of spending differently. So how is that translating to your all's businesses? Often, when I'm feeling tight on cash, the first thing that goes is coffee. So are you all seeing that in your businesses, and how is that impacting your day-to-day of your business or your planning?
Yeah, I would say consumer spending looks different this year. And so we're doing our very best to make it more convenient to shop local. We launched an app this year. We're trying to find ways that we can be integrated into people's day-to-day a bit more easily. But I do think that you raise prices and then you wait and hold your breath to see, like, what is the threshold that someone is willing to pay for a latte? And at the same time, if we don't raise prices, then we can work just as hard and still not make ends meet.
Yeah.
And so for us, I think that we have to work really hard to not be nostalgic about pricing, to say, like, well, it used to cost this much and it should only be this expensive. And to say, like, these are our costs now. This is what the spreadsheet is telling me. These are the decisions we've made, and this is what we're going to charge. And then we can make decisions from there. But had to make it. People so many times romanticize the coffee industry, and it's not been quite the fairy tale that people expect this last year.
Yeah, I can only imagine it. And Gabe, are you seeing similar things in Arizona and Ron in Michigan, or?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, kind of circling back to something Ron added to earlier, is like, we don't know when we place orders. I was just thinking back to, we placed a holiday order from a small creator, actually in Canada, small queer-owned business up there that we've ordered from every year, these great holiday ornaments, and they shipped right after the de minimis exception was removed. And so all of a sudden, we ended up with a $1,200 order that cost us almost $2,000. And it's just like, well, that's super fun to deal with, because now I have a bunch of inventory that at the original price point maybe pays for all of it. So we're seeing consumer behavior change in that aspect on what they're grabbing from our retail side, but also like our pastries and stuff like that. They may come in for the coffee, but they're not grabbing the muffin. They're not grabbing the breakfast sandwich. So behavior's definitely been an impact for our day to day.
And Ron?
Yeah, we've seen similar. I think people are a little more choosy. They're maybe limiting the number of times they come into the cafe. But we're also being a lot more, I guess, snoopy when it comes to seeing what everyone else is pricing their coffee at, and just trying to be a little bit more aware of, okay, where do we fit in with all these price increases that we're seeing? I never like being the first one out of the gates to be raising prices. But yeah, definitely a lot more attention is being paid to, okay, what is the consensus here on the grocery store shelves, and what's going on here with other cafes. So yeah, things are getting even more razor thin, so to speak.
Yeah, and I guess I've taken a different approach. I am not as snoopy as I used to be because I just am convinced that nobody knows what they're doing. And so I would so much rather have the data inform my decision about what to charge. And the conversation that we're having, my husband and I together and with our team, is like, let's make sure that the only thing people could be frustrated about is the price. Let's go over and above in customer service, make sure the quality is on point, to say, like, we know that this is not the most convenient place to stop, and it is more expensive than it used to be. But if we can deliver on everything else, then I can live with that complaint.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean,
Mhm.
per our namesake, we pride ourselves in being able to provide a superior product, but yeah, we're still in kind of we'll say a blue collar kind of environment. I mean, our demographic is such to where we don't have the New York, Chicago, LA type purses. So we have to
We
kind of
don't
know
either.
yeah, well, and I don't think the majority of coffee roasters out there have that wealth in their backyard. But yeah, we're certainly, when I started the business, I was paying attention to, okay, trying to get people off red can and blue can coffee, and making it affordable.
So that's yeah. You made me laugh, but the New York and LA person is a Californian person, but I appreciate how that sentiment. So we talked a lot today, I think, about some of the burdens and I think the challenge you all are facing, but it seems like solutions might be around the corner. I know currently the Supreme Court is weighing whether the administration has the authority to impose these tariffs, and Gabe was able to join me actually in Washington last month on the Supreme Court, the day of that court case. What would that decision mean for you all if they upheld it, or if they didn't upheld that decision? And kind of what are you all hoping kind of comes out of that Supreme Court decision? What does that solution really look like for you all? Since Gabe was there, I'll start with Gabe.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I firmly believe that the tariffs are unconstitutional and they do need to be overturned. The question I have is, what do they do after that? I think the impacts are clear of what has been the most burdensome has been the small business community. And I think we need to have targeted relief, either by design through the court decision or through action from Congress. And it needs to be targeted for small businesses. I think we know what's going to happen. The writing is on the wall. We've seen this movie before. If you give all of the tariffs back to the big box corporations, they're going to pass those tariff wins, quote unquote, those refunds, right on back to their shareholders. So it's not going to benefit the consumer. It's not going to benefit the customer. It's not going to benefit the small business. It's not going to benefit our neighborhoods. So I think realistically, it's what happens after they realize that it is truly unconstitutional. They act, and then how do they support us from there?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I saw that we could get a decision potentially as early as January. So, Ron, Autumn, what would that decision mean for you all, and what are you hoping comes out of that?
Well, I mean, I'm going to echo Gabe certainly on the fact that it's unconstitutional, and I think that's how they should rule on it. But there's even word on the street that they may rule to not overturn it just because of the logistical nightmare that it would create trying to give that money back to those who paid it. And for us, it's just it's not something I foresee in our future as far as getting refund, because the importers have to pay that to the ports, and I don't think they're going to be passing that on to us, the roasters.
Yeah. Autumn?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see it overturned as well, but I'm not optimistic that we will see any money from that. I just hope that it would set a precedent moving forward to make sure that this goes through the proper channels. I do think like the next best solution to giving the money to small businesses would be giving money to consumers, to say, okay, instead of trusting large corporations to do what is in everyone's best interest, we could give the money back to consumers to be able to support the businesses that they choose, and hopefully provide some additional buying power and relief for the people that will come through our doors.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic point. I mean, at the end of the day, I trust my community members to spend any type of relief that's given with intent. Like the sentiment is clear. People want to support small local businesses. So even if you can't give the relief to us, that's a fantastic point. I didn't even think of that one. So.
Wow. Our small businesses are the drivers of our economies. You all see this day to day, and I really appreciate you all kind of joining today and sharing a bit about what's been happening in your all locals communities and with your small businesses. I think today we definitely learned that coffee shops tell a broader story of what tariff chaos means for small businesses across America. And unfortunately, when policies make it impossible to plan and impossible to price, as well as impossible to grow, that they create damaging ripples throughout our entire communities. Small businesses employ nearly half of America's workforce and drive innovation in every corner of this country, and we all depend on their success. When Main Street thrives, communities thrive. And right now, 74% of small business owners are worried about surviving those next 12 months. And that should alarm everybody. Small businesses need stability, not chaos. They need policies that help them grow and hire, not ones that make survival a daily question. And they need our policymakers to invest in their success. And so similar to our coffee shop owners today who joined us for what I'm going to call our coffee break, if you'd like to share your story with Small Business for America's Future and get involved, we encourage you all to visit our website at www.smallbusinessforamericasfuture.com. Or since you're following us live on social media, just click subscribe and stay informed on what we're kind of working on and doing. And appreciate you all joining us. We hope you all have a happy holidays. And please remember to support your local small businesses. Have a great day, and thank you all so much for joining. We'll see you all soon.